Beatles for me was a bit like a suit or a shirt I once wore. And unfortunately, a lot of people look at that suit and think it's me. And I don't mean that in a bitter way or anything. It's just the reality is that I'm, this soul in a body, and the Beatles was this thing we did for a few years. And it was just such a big thing that, it's amazing that people just keep going on about it.
Once they were the Fabulous Four. Now, 15 years after the murder of John Lennon, Paul, George and Ringo are what's left of the Beatles, still the greatest rock band of them all.
I think basically we had some good songs and a lot of people were happy with the songs. We tried to give some love, and that really is what it's all about.
All you need is love. All you need is love.
Well, the Beatles are back together again for one last time, on record at least, with 2 new songs featured in a 6-hour TV chronicle on their lives.
And winding road.
Why did you agree, the 3 surviving members, to do this after so long?
Well, I tell you what, we've had this film. This film has been around in various forms right since 1969. And it lay there for years. It was tentatively called The Long and Winding Road. But at that time, everybody was annoyed at each other. We were all splitting up. We were tired of being in the Beatles. We'd had all that pressure. And after all these years, it's good because a lot of water's gone under the bridge. And, quite honestly, it's like, to me, it's just like separate from me.
In a rare interview, George Harrison, the most reclusive of all the Beatles, has given Today Tonight a remarkable insight of the phenomena that was Beatlemania.
You are obviously recognised by people from
There's
that
still
era.
a lot of 17-year-olds standing down by the front door. I can't understand it. I try not to be recognised. There's a period where people didn't have a clue who I was because, if you don't keep a high profile, they forget about you, and then there's all this other stuff, Michael Jackson's and all those people take over in the press. And I really enjoyed that. That's the only thing I'm a bit dubious about with this big Beatle launch again, because then people will be able to pick me out. Mm. But by the time the show comes on the 19th, I'm going to have short blue hair.
There are 2 new songs on there. In fact, one of them, Free as a Bird, that John recorded on mono. He's playing the piano.
Yeah.
How difficult was it melding the 3 surviving Beatles with John?
Yeah, it was, it just took a little time, really. It was pretty tricky because what we did was, at first we took his cassette, and because it was only a demo and it was unfinished, he was just plodding along, and some places he'd go quicken up a bit and some places he'd slow down. And we put all the backing in, did all the singing, and Paul and I wrote some words to the middle part that John had never finished. And we did the total new record, in fact, and then we just took his voice and we dropped it in, every line where we needed it, until we had built up the, the lead vocal part.
Sean Lennon said it was spooky having a dead guy as lead singer. Did you find it spooky?
It's not spooky, but I don't know if this has ever happened to you, if you think that, we all, when we're alive and you hear our music, you hear our voices, but the moment somebody dies, it's suddenly eerie, whether it's John Lennon or Ayrton Senna. Just the idea when you hear him speak, it suddenly is very emotional.
I am the Eggman. I am the walrus.
I think he would like it. In fact, I said to them, I hope somebody does this to all my crap demos when I'm dead. Make them into hit songs. We did see Elvis, and he was playing a Fender bass, and he was watching television, and it was the first time we'd ever seen a remote control for the TV, and he was going click, changing the station. We were thinking, how's he doing that?
I like a lot of the new groups, you know, the Beatles and the Beards and whoever.
He was great, really. I mean, it was a very difficult thing to set up, you know, the Beatles and Elvis, but it was just basically loads of men playing snooker and, you know, there's a bar while they were playing pool and, you know, it was just in Elvis's rented house.
Did you sing a song?
No, but he was playing Moher Sam, the record of Moher Sam all the time.
How did you feel years later when he actually came out and criticised you, the group, didn't he?
Yeah, it was sad. It was sad because he was trying to get a special license to carry a gun and all this, and a special badge off of Richard Nixon. That's a joke. He was saying, oh yeah, Mr. President, I'll tell you about the Beatles and, you know, they take drugs and corrupt the youth and all this. And yeah, he was found with like 7 different kinds of drug in his body. Or as my friend Alvin Leon said, they found some blood in his drug stream. We always said the Beatles was us 4, and if ever one of us wasn't in it, then it's not the Beatles. And I think the idea of having John as the singer on the record, it works, it is the Beatles. You know, there was talk about us doing stuff on our own, but I have no desire really to do, you know, a 3.
There was a lot of material, George, that was discovered. Did you forget about that? And what was it like seeing it again?
Yeah, it was great to see some photography that I'd never ever seen before, because there's been so many books and documentaries anyway that you would think that more or less everything's been unearthed. There's a scene of Hamburg, and there was all these pictures of us playing when we were really silly in our early days, and it's great stuff. And there's some footage we have found of our own, like, you know, 8mm home movie stuff and whatever we could come up with. So there's a lot of funny things like that, and there's a lot of dialogue and bits that are just, you know, more interesting 30 years later, you know.
There are 2 new songs on there. How do you think you sound together this time? How do you think you sound?
Sounds just like the Beatles, except now. You know, because there's been a bit of progress made in the recording sounds and different things in the studio, but it just sounds like them.
The impact of John Lennon's death, is it still strong with the surviving members? With you?
It's just really, it's like many people's deaths, that is unfortunate, and it's something that was unnecessary. And I think it was a bit of a waste.
The people in the cheaper seats, clap your hand. And the rest of you, if you just rattle your jewellery.
You know, I've heard people say, well, it was a perfect end to his life because, you know, he's now like this mystical proportion. The moment he was killed and you heard his voice singing Imagine, it suddenly had so much more profound effect.
Imagine there's no heaven.
It's easy to be dead because then people just keep saying how great you were or whatever. But when you're alive, you've got to, you know, look at him. He's like, especially it's funny to see in some of this footage we're doing of the, you know, cutting together some shots of John with us. It still all looks just like we're in the same room together.
It's been a while, isn't it, since you put something out?
It's been a hell of a long time.
So where's your career heading now?
Career, yeah. It's kind of my career. I've never really had a career since the Beatles.
Do you feel that way? You've been a bit hard?
I mean, I've done many things, and I've had a lot of things to do, but I didn't milk my career like some people do, you know. Make sure they do all their press and get their records out, and they have promo men, and they tour, and they really hype up the, you know, the commercial potential. But, you know, I was never into that. I like to be one of the backroom boys.